Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 16th special meeting of Council on this very snowy day. It's ideal that we're all able to mostly be at our homes. There's a couple of us here at the office, but it is quite a snow day out there. There's a few members of staff that aren't able to be with us today. They'll join in if they are able to. There's been a fire call, so we'll go from there. So first order is I will ask Mallory if you can do roll call, please.
Right, Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Donaldson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor McKechnie.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Wood Roberts.
Present.
And Mayor Roberts.
Yes, present.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. The next thing is to adopt the agenda for today's meeting. So if I can have a mover and a seconder. And Councillor Wood Roberts and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of the Council of the Municipalities et al. Held on February 16th, 2021 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. And I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we will move along to how the meeting is going to go. This is going to be a slightly different meeting. So we, as you know, we have all of our staff that are available on the screen with us today, and they'll be staying on the screen, except when Tamara is doing her share screen. And I'm just going to ask staff to participate. This is review and first steps or next steps, whichever you want to call it. I'd say it first steps of our service delivery review. And it's going to be an ongoing thing, but this is the first kick at it and seeing where we want to go forward with the recommendations that came out of that service delivery review. So as there are no resolutions until the end, like I say, I will ask staff to stay on. The other thing is I had a couple people ask how long the meeting was planned to go for. We did schedule it from 1 to 3. So hopefully we can fit everything in that time. If it goes a few minutes longer, that's okay, but I definitely want to try to work towards that time set. So to start with, I'm going to just welcome everybody. And this has been a long process in the making of getting to today's meeting. And I think, Tamara, probably the best thing to do is we'll start the screen share and we'll go do a little bit of an overview of where we're at today, if that's okay.
Can you see that okay?
Yes, I think I can, so therefore everybody else can. So as you know, our service delivery review was presented back to council, and in last, actually, well, this is today's meeting. It says February 16th, but here's the next slide, Tamara. It's got the timeline on it. Back in November of 2019, council directed our CAO to make the application under our Modernization Fund. And so this is exactly what the Modernization Fund was for, to see if there's opportunities that we can work a little more efficiently, a little more effectively with what we have and what our main core, what our services are. And so then in March 20th, we awarded the RFP to Strategy Corps, as you all know, and they undertook doing the service delivery review. For some, it was a little confusing because there was also a service delivery review by the same company for the county. As we know, we also received that one, and we will be talking to that a little bit later in the slide deck. And where Dysart fits into that. And also Deputy Mayor Kennedy and I can sort of fill you in a little bit on what some of the first steps. The county had a meeting middle of January to do a similar thing that we're doing today, which is, where to go next. You've got this service delivery review, and it's up to council to know what to do next. So then in September, Strategy Corps was here to present that final report. And we finally have our meeting today to go through it. So that's where we are today. And the next slide. So during the process, we identified 7 initiatives, and they're there on your screen. Don't need to really go through them, but we will be going through them. I don't need to read what's on the screen right there. So you go ahead.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'm going to get Tamara to sort of go through the high level. And then what I'm going to do is that after each initiative, we're going to have a little conversation. And then again, at the end of the meeting, we'll make sure that we really know what our direction is to staff and for ourselves, what we're setting goals. So Tamara, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So basically on each initiative, I've just provided a very high level overview, basically directly from the plan. The timeline that's noted in the yellow on the bottom is directly from the plan at all as well. You'll know from discussion that some of the items are moving forward anyway, even if they're at the end of the plan, at least portions of them. So we'll discuss each as we go. Basically with the strategic plan, they've identified that a strategic plan and performance management framework would drive staff performance and improve service efficiency and effectiveness. So here we're not looking at a monetary gain, but potential productivity gains. At this point, council has $25,000 earmarked for corporate strategic plan. We're thinking this is identified for this year and next year in the service delivery review. So we're thinking that we will hopefully be well underway by the fall and probably straddle the winter season. So we're bringing back forward a more detailed report on that as we go to determine whether it's best to go to RFP or look at other solutions or to see if there's any funding out there or whether there's other funds council wants to apply to it if we get through the process quicker than we think. One thing to note is that the creation of a strategic plan will help align the objectives with the plan for staff and council moving forward and provide that basis for performance measurement. You might also notice that with the initiatives that were identified within the service delivery review, they align fairly closely with the 6 big things that you identified at an earlier session of council at the beginning of the term, which were the recreation master plan, housing, parks management plan, lake health, a Dysart master plan, and digitizing Dysart. There's not much there that either hasn't been working on or hasn't been re-identified in this plan. So those things will all be developed further and discussed further as we get into the strategic planning process where more detailed business plans can be developed from within there to move us forward. I'm going to stop share for a minute, or do I need to stop share? Would anyone
No,
like to
because
discuss
I dragged the grid over, so I've dragged it over so just to keep your screen there, Tamara, if you will. But what I'll do is open it up to the floor for questions or comments or to see if they sort of agree with the timeline. There's a few things, as Tamara said, we could go out for RFP. There's other, or do we wait? We're going to have do we look at other sources of funding for this? So, but I think it's setting out the end date of when we'd like our strategic plan to be finalized and then working backwards from there will give Tamara some direction. And I think it's really going to be beneficial for all staff, all councillors, and for Dysart Council moving beyond this term of council. They'll have sort of know what the priorities are. And I think that's been certainly a goal of mine to make sure that we had a formal strategic plan, a corporate strategic plan. So I would like personally, and I'll see what other people, comments from other councillors and staff, I'd like to see this finalized by May of 2022 would be my target. Then we get into the election cycle and we shouldn't be finishing up anything like that at that time. There's still lots of other work, but I think it's very realistic to be finished at the very outset of May 2022. So comments, questions from staff or council? Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, there's the strategy is very important, but I think there's some context stuff I think we have to keep in mind. I think I got thinking about this, and perhaps maybe the biggest challenge we've got is in terms of our staff. And we're going to have to look to tomorrow on this is just kind of how much have we got the right skill sets in place, or our department heads, if they got time to be able to support some of this stuff, or some of the strategic the build up that needs to be done, some of the strategic planning. The other thing is in terms of the context of the COVID and not being able to meet with people. There's a certain amount we can do through, Zoom meetings or through surveys and that kind of thing. It's still, especially when you start talking about customer service and engaging our changing population on some of our strategies, it's going to be very difficult to do that without being able to pull people together. So I guess maybe what I'm thinking on this is we try to see how much we can do up front in terms of preparation and skill sets and that type of thing that needs to be done with view to be able to, as soon as the COVID stuff is at a point where we start doing meetings, that we're able to start engaging our ratepayers on what's important. And a little bit of this goes back to what I'm thinking of in terms of what's going to be going on with the census. We've seen a lot of change in people moving up to the area as a result of COVID. I know traditionally I look at my ward and I've got 60% seasonal, 40% permanent, and I think a lot of that is changing. The other thing that drives what I think is important, or what I feel is important going forward, is our mix of our seniors and young people, and what what our community needs to both enable an environment that's safe and friendly for a seniors community, but also support young people and families being engaged in the community and being able to feel like this is going to be a home going forward. So we've got a number of contextual things that I think are going to drive some of our at least good quality planning. And I think a big part of that is some input from Tamara in terms of the resources she's got, resources she thinks she needs to address some of the components of a good strategic plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. I think that we had discussed, though, doing, you talk about community engagement, and but I believe this would be a corporate strategic plan. It's not a community vision plan per se. It's a more of a business corporate strategic plan that was suggested. And I think that staff will be able to make themselves available for something like that. I mean, I can only imagine the hours that were spent just to get to the service delivery review, but if that's sort of done, and now this is the next progression after that, hopefully it won't be quite as much as time consuming as this was, but I think all staff would have the ability to have input, and so would councillors, for the creation of a strategic plan. And I think with the suggestion of that would be finalized at the very outset of May 2022, there's lots of ample time. I'm hoping that by September that we are able to meet in person again. I don't have a crystal ball on COVID, but I think that that's something I'm thinking towards. But anyway, just in terms of keeping with the strategic plan and keeping that as an initiative and one that we want to follow through, I just want to continue to hear from that. And I see Councillor Smith had a question.
Yep, thank you. No, and I think you've made an important point there, Andrea, that, Mayor Roberts, that it is a corporate plan. And as opposed to an entire community plan. But I wanted to kind of raise the point. I'm a big believer in the importance of the plan, setting some priorities, having performance metrics, and so forth. Wished we'd done that even a couple of years back. And one of the things I think we'll need to talk about later this year, is before we actually initiate this, is how far we want to take this plan for this count. In the time frame you mentioned, you hope to finalize this in May. Well, that's sort of nearing the stage for this council. I think you used the term lame duck or something like that, that we're into another election campaign. And so I'd like to hear from other councillors as to how we might structure this so that we can make some good progress. We can, get the input from staff. We can lay out some of these priorities and get it positioned such that a new council coming in at the end of 2020 or late in 2022 would be positioned to confirm that or fine tune it based on whatever priorities those new councillors may have relative to the one that would be reaching end of term. That's the only aspect of this that, as I say, from a timing point of view, is of concern to me that we, it would be unfair of this council to sort of harness the next council in terms of, restricting them some fashion. So we've got to be able to do this work and learn from the experience, and then allow the new council to, embrace it or fine tune it, or so whatever it may be, based on whatever priorities and perspectives they may have. So, as I said, I'd be interested in others in terms of, that's just the one aspect of it that I think we need to be sensitive to.
Yeah, and good points. And I don't disagree with you. It's sort of unfortunate that we maybe didn't do this from the get-go, but the first year, but we didn't. And at least we're going forward now. And the other thing is, we're not like a board. We're not a hospital board or even a board of health that I sit on, where you have members who roll over terms, different things. So we are in this unique situation where we get elected, and literally it could be 7 completely different people in December of 2022. And so that we are very different in that respect. Anyway, Tamara, I had her hand up, and then to Councillor Smith's question, I'd like to hear from some other councillors. So Tamara, go first, and then we'll.
I was just going to say, Councillor Smith nailed it, that it'll be ready, this plan. You'll have it prepared for the new council coming in as well. And it suggests a 4-year planning cycle. So hopefully that'll keep repeating itself to review and confirm and tweak it. And part of you'll see at the end, we've recommended an annual review of it, both before budget and to make sure we identify. So it'll be the same thing as we move through the cycles. The big work will be done, but then the next council coming in might go, you know what, that's out of date now, or that information isn't even valid anymore. So let's strike that one. And we found even through the process of developing this plan, things changed rapidly. Like in the first draft we had, it included developing a new website with e-commerce for Dysart, and we already had that done before the ink dried, so we removed it. So we're rapidly changing. So I think to answer your question, it's a very live document. That's the intention.
Any other councillors or staff want to comment on that? They agree with this initiative and want to move forward, and staff would then come forward with a report in terms of how to further finance this, or the choice between either a sole source or an RFP, and we can go from there. Anyone else want to comment on that, or we'll just move on to the next initiative? Okay, go ahead.
All right, the next one is customer service. So they identified that an improved customer service model would improve resident satisfaction and staff efficiency. So again, we're looking at productivity gains. So to date, they've identified this as an immediate priority. So 2021-22. The status right now is that we've built website feedback and complaint mechanisms into the new website. We've reviewed our phone system and made sure that somebody can now hit 0 to get a live body, so they're not stuck in the voicemail cycle. We've identified primary contacts internally for staff for both phone and online queries. We've ensured that customer service is an important evaluation criteria for employee performance evaluations. We've identified related training sessions for council and staff for this year. Again, it's just noted, we developed our new website with customer focus, including e-commerce, and currently trying to roll out the new building software. I guess under that, our next steps would be that are recommended within the plan, or creating a policy. If you remember, not this past year because we got sidetracked with COVID, but the year before, we'd met several times with staff and council in a workshop format to seek input into how we could improve on customer service and communications internally and externally. So we need to move to the next step of developing that into a policy and setting some timelines that everybody can agree to for a response for things like email and standardized phone answers. There's the option of looking at a customer relationship software. I would suggest probably in 2022, excuse me, so we can focus this year on keeping to build out the e-commerce options. That would be about $3,000 a year. That would help with the tracking of queries, whether it's the roads or any department, and would help give us some, basically a flow chart of tickets and so forth to make sure tasks have been followed up on, again, internally and externally. Another thing that was suggested in that initiative was a public survey. So that could be something that could go out online and potentially through a tax bill. We could put a link in the newspaper. We'd have to think about what the contents of that was in terms of customer service and communications and community expectations. So that's something we can consider as well. Any questions or comments on that?
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mara, your latter comment there about some surveys. I think that is a tremendously important step. You've identified as in your status here a number of actions that you've already taken, intuitively it would seem that they're targeted to improve, our customer satisfaction. But we don't actually know right now, what level of satisfaction. Whether it's taxpayers, whether it's business organizations that deal with us, apply for permits and so forth. So do you have a plan to specifically start to collect some data to establish that baseline? Well, here's where we're at. Our score is 66%, or it's a B, or it's an A plus, or whatever, so that we know where we are. So then as we take actions, we can actually measure their impact, if you like. Did they improve, or did it cause the satisfaction to go down? I don't know. So
yeah.
when might we get, a proposal, if you like, from you or a member of staff to say, here's the survey that we'd like, the survey and the survey process that we'd like to put in place, and here's when it's going to start?
Well, if we didn't have to time it with tax bills, we'd have a lot more flexibility to do it through the year. So we could probably do it by the summertime when there's a lot of people around.
Yeah, I think Councillor Smith, you make a really good point, because in all surveys, it's always about what questions get asked, because what are you expecting to get out of those? And it's very different if you do a survey regarding winter maintenance. Are you happy? Just thinking about all the snow today, and so the residential homeowner says, "Oh yes, my Pine Street was plowed in a timely manner," compared to somebody dealing in a building department with a multi-residential dwelling or a big other proposal, or so there's who are we targeting and what are the questions that we're trying to ask. I do think that one thing that already on our website, we do have that ability to communicate a little bit better than we ever had. And one thing that I think will always happen no matter what, even with customer service and communication, is, and maybe this is just because we're all more accessible, we know our friends and neighbors, and we're more small municipality, is that people are just going to pick up the phone and they're going to call Pat, or they're going to call Larry or Walt or whomever, all of us, and with mainly their complaint. But so I really think it's important to decide how we want to go about doing this, because the whole point is we're here to serve the people. And if we could be doing it better, let us know. And actually I mentioned this in my marriage report one time with Mike Jaycock on Canoe, and he said, "Well, can people send in a compliment too?" I said, "Well, sure, of course they can. You just don't," and you know that you don't usually hear the compliments that often, but it is about serving the people so you have to ask the right questions, target those people. So there might be a combination of different things. One thing I'd really like to see, and we started on this course, but we didn't quite finish, is actual policies adopted by council and policies that set out those timelines of when an email should be answered and when a phone call should be answered and when you forward your email if you're on vacation, all those, I know they're simple and I'm sure we're doing it for the most part. But every once in a while you hear, I sent an email to such and such department and they still haven't got back to me. So I think it's really important to get those policies in place too. Councillor Smith?
Policies would be great, but it's going to be a journey, and it starts with a few simple steps, and there's some actions taken here. But even to implement a process where we formally ask people at the end of a transaction, what was your experience? You can't buy gas, go to a restaurant, do anything almost in this world this day, and you get a receipt and it's got some information on it that says, tell us how we did. We don't even need to be that sophisticated, but we need to, in my opinion, we need to get a process in place where we start to ask people, how did we do? So, one of the examples mentioned was building permits. Anybody applies for a building permit, it's a bit of an iterative process, but they finally get the permit. Well, ask them, how was your experience? And there could be 3 or 4 questions that follow on from that, but we'll learn from that and say, oh, well, we never thought of it from that point of view. Maybe we could improve the building permit process as a result of that feedback. We don't need to ask, all 6,000 property owners what they think, because many of them, their interaction with us is they get a tax bill, they pay a tax bill, and yeah, they notice the streets got plowed or they didn't get plowed. Depending on the day, they'll have a different reaction to that. There's a series of things that we do. People can, when COVID restrictions get lifted a little further, people will be coming into the office. They come in there for a variety of purposes. What was your experience? And that's where I'm just suggesting it's not going to be perfect out of the gate. But unless we start the journey of saying, yeah, we're going to ask some people how we did, get their responses, figure out, as I said, how are we scoring? Where do we need to get better? I'm just looking at, obviously not going to nail it down today, but to me, an important part of this initiative number 2 is beginning that process of saying, yeah, we're doing some things, we're collecting some information. We know that we've got these areas now that we want to improve because the measurements weren't very good. Or other areas maybe say, we don't need to improve. Our scores are fantastic. And then we can brag about that. But you got to have the courage to start the process of measurement.
Good points. Deputy Mayor Kennedy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we're well on our way on this customer service initiative. I would like to see staff bring forward when some of these things are going to be completed. A lot of these things are underway, started, planning. If we had some goals in mind, that would certainly help. And I agree with the getting the policy in place with some expectations. And is there a way on our new website, Tamara, that we can track, same as our IT, how many people got spammed or whatever each month, how many inquiries came in, how many were returned in a timely fashion, how many were slow? So that would give each department a bit of a scorecard to work from. I don't know if
that would be the customer relationship software at $3,000 a year that I suggest we.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, your audio's cutting in and out, Tamara.
I muted myself too. Can you hear me now? Okay. That's the customer relations software that I was speaking about. That's $3,000 a year. That's what I suggested, that if you wanted to look at that in 2022, I think that would probably be a good timing to start that once we get more of the website functionality with the e-commerce developed, if you're agreeable to that.
So seeing as it's come up that different departments would handle customer service differently, the taxation department, I mean, if you're paying your bills, I would say I have no comment. I guess they're doing a good job. They take my money and I pay my taxes on time. So that would be a difficult department to do a section. But if we focused on, say, the building department, I'm sorry, Carl's not able to be with us right now. But what if we focused on that, where that we do have a lot of interaction with the public, and just see what staff can come up with as, you know, when to have some kind of feedback in the building department is one area. Again, roads we usually hear about when there's a problem, but yeah, I don't know. So how you would do that where a building permit is an actual thing that a customer or a ratepayer gets that permit. That would be sort of to me an easy one, because it's going to trigger us to have that person's contact information and ask, like Councillor Smith said, how do we do at the end of the process? And so maybe we look at it as a slightly different customer service model, customer service approach for depending on what department we're referring to. For recreation, maybe, you know, deal with that. So I don't know. Deputy Mayor Kennedy said that he'd like to see staff come forward. So maybe each department head could let us know how they see their interaction with the public and maybe come up with those ideas. Anyone else want to comment on that idea, or? Tamara, go ahead.
Well, I think that'll be part of the policy, and that would be, we can definitely bring forward a report with options for the software as well to show how that works, because I honestly don't understand it myself 100% yet. I just know it's about a $3,000 price tag, looking at about 20 people licensed to use it. So that would deal with both internal and external direction of I could just think of one last night, somebody emailing to ask when a road would be plowed. And so I emailed that to the roads operations manager, and then he emails them back. There may be opportunities like that where there was a central spot for people to send those queries and it sort of to flow through automatically based on different criteria.
Okay, well, that's something to consider. Councillor McKechnie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, am I off? Yeah. I guess I'm old school. To me, we're talking about so much which is common sense. You know, and needless to say, I'm not a big supporter of these consultants. And I think there's just so much here that, I mean, you take our building department and sure, we have people that have, I don't like to use the word complaints, concerns, that something's gone wrong or whatever. That's probably the biggest department that gets the most that in roads. But I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and the answers, I know what the answer is. The road, we didn't get it plowed. Well, there's a reason why Rob never got the truck up there. It isn't because he didn't want to. There's a reason. Maybe it broke down. Maybe the constituent didn't realize it's going to snow like heck tomorrow too. And the same with the building department. I mean, everything is communication and how you handle it. I don't want to go back in my career, but I was a restaurant owner. You think I didn't have a few concerns, a few complaints? If I handled them the way that I really wanted to, I would never have, the customer would never come back. But I knew that I had to handle it in a professional way. And I think that's just the biggest message we got to install in our staff is you're representing the municipality at ISART. And like I say, I don't want to say anything more negative. Thank you.
Well, that's fine. You're not saying negative. It's just comments. And yeah, I mean, restaurant is a really kind of easy one because someone's going in there, they have their experience, and you know, everybody wants to comment on service was good, food was great, all that kind of stuff. So or not. But it's a little harder, and that's why I think each department has to handle how we communicate this a little bit differently. But Tamara, who would take the lead on actually writing or drafting some policies for an overall approach for every department? Of, like I said, when
We're doing that.
You're doing that. That would be you. Is there any other staff that could help that you could see that could help facilitate?
Well, we've already done the data gathering from the workshops, so now it's a matter of
Okay.
together and bringing it together.
So maybe that's the first step, is starting with those policies. If we want to get something down in paper today of how we're going forward, to start with those customer service policies in terms of replying to phone calls, emails, etc., and how they.
I think also planning some of those related customer service training as well throughout the year. There's different opportunities through OMLI, which is the Ontario Municipal Leadership Institute. A lot of municipalities use them because then it's focused specifically on the sector. And I think there are some good opportunities that we can do both policy and training at the same time this year.
Okay. So that's something the council would like to see, is those policies come forward in due course. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, a lot of it is expectations management. So in some of these areas, that it is possible to put up what our service standards are. And if you know, what especially with the website, if we can do that, you know, for some secondary roads, it's a 24-hour timeline before we have a plow down them. And that should be standard, not somebody comes up and says, well, they should be here in 2 hours. Well, that's maybe not realistic. So I think we have to, as much as possible, try to post what the standards are for certain things, and that at least will create a realistic expectation for people, so that they know they're getting good service or they're not getting good service. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, just looking up, are there any further, go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Just to build on what Councillor Clark has suggested, you know, there's an example from the point of view of the roads department in the wintertime. If we publish those standards and said that you know, here's our objective, might agree with it, you might not agree with it, but it is our objective, and that's what we're committed to meeting. And then posted our results. Okay, so we met that objective 9 out of 10 times. We missed these roads on such and such a date, and you know, here's why, and here's the change that we're making to get better. It's that kind of expectation setting. It's about setting goals and measuring your performance against it. That's you know, that's how you drive customer satisfaction, and that's how you get some feedback from customers that gives you an indication of these are the things that we need to focus on getting better at. Right now, we're picking the things that we think are important, and we might be missing something that you know, our taxpayers would say, no, this thing over here is more important to me. Or somebody that applied for a building permit. This is the experience I had. This is the part of it that frustrated me. We hear about some of these things, and we get emails, we forward them, and so forth. But I think bringing that structure to it, that formality, you know, is really important.
Okay. Tamara, do you feel you've made notes and know where we're going with customer service?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few initiatives within it that we can keep moving forward throughout the year. I don't think we'll ever be finished because it's an ongoing process. Like, keep training and keep creating policy.
I see.
Technologies change, but we're definitely being well underway this year.
I think being finished isn't something that is the goal. It's that the communication channels are clear and that we're listening, because you're not going to always, customer service does not necessarily mean making everybody happy. It means though that the people know where to go, they know what to say, they might not like the answer, but there's that clear communication back and forth. Councillor Donaldson?
Just a quick thought. Do all of our plow trucks have GPSs in them? Does anybody know?
Bob's nodding yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So I'm just thinking that, you know, and I have no idea because I really don't know what I'm talking about, but the GPS could be linked to an app. So people that are concerned about where that plow truck is and how close it is to their road, instead of calling anybody and not getting a recording or whatever, they go on the app and they find out where their snowplow truck is, because the GPS, I mean, it shows there's lots of other things that do that, where you can track yourself even. So it must be fairly simple procedure now, but they can just go on an app and where's the plow truck, and it'll show them exactly where it is and how long they have to wait without having any interaction with staff or emails. Is that
good points. Actually, I'm going to put Deputy Mayor Kennedy on the spot and see if he can remember at the county. Do we not have a thing on the county? First of all, there's the Municipal 511, but that's just about road closures and different things. But is there not anything, you know, Track My Plow? Did we not?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's official that way on the website or not. There is something on there, I know, And
Okay.
I'm sorry, I haven't
That's
looked
okay.
lately.
We've talked about this before. I know, I mean, in the city, you want to know when the 6:42 bus is coming along, and you can literally know it is going to be at your stop at 1:52. And so you get out there that time. But I'm not sure on the municipal 511 if that's available. I don't know if, Rob, do you know what the county, are they doing anything like that? Or am I just remembering something?
I don't recall the 511 site you're talking to. It does track provincial highways, the plows on the provincial network.
Okay.
But it's a little more straightforward, is they go from point A to point B, turn around and come back. Our network's a little more complex than that.
Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, it's something to think about. And, when we ever, especially on a day like today, this morning, and we have a snow event, not just 2 inches, people need to be patient. That's why school buses got canceled today. So, there is a due course, but posting our minimum road stand or minimum maintenance standards or something, or making that easily able to be found. Is good. I don't know if that's, I've been on our new website quite a bit, but I didn't look for that. So I don't know if that's something that people can find. So back to Tamara before we move on to the next initiative, to make sure that she's clear, and other staff, if they have any questions, comments in terms of where we want to go with customer service. Like I say, we could treat different departments differently. Discuss with Carl what the possibility is doing through the building department, and also getting policies in place for customer service. Okay. Councillor Smith?
Sorry, just because we've got several of these initiatives here, and we talked about the first one, we now talked about the second one. I'm concerned that we I think we need a way here, a mechanism or an approach that as we go through each initiative, we reach some sort of conclusion. So what's going to happen next? Mayor has made some notes from comments that have been made, but shouldn't we as council establish a direction to even say, or Tamara could initiate something and say, I'm going to report back to council, in April of 2021 with some recommendations in this regard, and we've given some direction today that will shape the nature of that report back. I'm looking for something, I guess, more specific here, as opposed to just okay, we've had a nice conversation for a couple of hours, but we as council have a responsibility to give staff some direction, and otherwise, really, where are we?
Absolutely. That's why I'm trying to recap after each one and say, so I think we set that we want some policies anyway. Tamara, you speak, and then I don't want to speak over you.
Yeah, and I think I took that as consensus amongst council that you wanted to complete the policy. You want to look at a public survey for later in the year, which I'll come forward with a more detailed report.
Tamara, your audio is going in and out, so just be
Okay.
careful when you're speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come closer to the computer. Okay, I'll repeat that then in case you missed it. We're going to look at creating the policy. We'll be doing training. We'll be developing the public survey this year, which all these things we'll bring back to council in the form of a more detailed report to ensure you're behind it before we move forward. And we'll also be recommending a customer relationship software implementation for 2022 prior to the budget, if that's what council, well, you can decide at that point because it's for next year's budget. But that's sort of the process, is everything that you agree through discussion today that you want to move forward. If I think that we can do this, or at least start these initiatives, then I'll just keep I'll bring these reports forward in more detail as you identify them throughout the year.
So what I think would be a good idea is, and Councillor Smith, I am trying to recap, we've done the 2 initiatives, we'll move on to the next one. Some of them, don't forget, they were saying, like, don't even start this till 2023. So some of the initiatives as we go forward with this are not necessarily going to be a priority. We start this year or next. But what I'm making notes, I encourage every councillor to make notes. And then Tamara, perhaps you could come back with a report that says this is a summary of today's meeting. And we could actually pass by resolution, yes, these are the things that we said bring forward. So if Tamara's missed something, and between my notes, Tamara's notes, Mallory's notes, and all of each counselor's notes, we'll be able to, is that okay? It obviously won't come to the next council meeting because that's a week today, but if it could come to maybe either the committee of the whole or the March council meeting. So this is the report that came out of this service delivery review meeting on the 16th. And we actually have a document that says this is what we said we do. I think that would be really helpful instead of just my notes in a binder in a little notebook. And same with yours. Is that okay, Councillor Smith? I think that's something that would help guide us all. Okay.
Yeah, I think that exactly. If you identify who's doing something, what it is they're going to do, and when they're going to do it by, is sort of a kind of a simple approach.
Yep.
Okay. So we have something on paper for a recap. Okay, so let's move on to initiative number 3.
Landfill strategy. So you'll note the timeline says 2024 or 2022 to 2024. But there are some imminent decisions need to be made in order to get landfill cards ready. So basically, the description of the initiative was to review landfill strategy, could identify potential savings and service level changes to ensure ongoing sustainability. So we're looking at modest revenue savings, but direct savings of, modest revenue increases with direct savings of 32 to 49,000. So currently, council's received a waste management short-term review from J2PG, our waste management consultant. And we have an education session planned with them as well regarding the overall waste management system. Through the pandemic, we implemented one more square system, I believe, in Harcourt to provide for the lack of cash. And I'm going to turn it over to John and Rob at this point to lead any further discussion.
Okay. Maybe John?
Or answer any questions.
So as was mentioned, the education session that's coming up in March 2nd, I think will outline some of the potential operational changes that can stem from the strategy that J2PG has prepared for council and that council had viewed at the last council session. And so the timelines, obviously we have landfill identification user cards going out in the tax bills this coming May. So we have an opportunity to kind of explore a lot of opportunities to kind of coincide with that new landfill card that will be going out to all taxpayers or all ratepayers in the next few months.
I believe, Barbara, you talked about too, we were wanting to do a newsletter that would go into that final tax bill. And I can't remember what the deadline is. So while you say it goes out the end of May, the printing deadline and the prep work for, Barbara's coming back to her screen. I just talked about it. Barbara, I was just saying with the, the tax bill, final tax bill going out in May, John just spoke to the fact that that's the end of May, but the printers need everything quite a bit earlier than that. So we need to make sure we're aware of those dates. I think you had said by the end of March, we need to have everything finalized. Okay. Okay, so if we're going to be making any decisions on that sort of thing. So we do have that upcoming meeting to go through some landfill issues. And so John, just to recap, is there anything that we would need to do, or is this one that we can hold off and further discuss when we have that special?
I suspect when we have the educational workshop on March the 2nd, a lot of this will kind of come to fruition and there'll be a lot of good discussion around various initiatives related to the landfill strategy at that time.
That's sort of what I was thinking. I don't want to cut off any conversation today, but I don't want to start to go down a path and then we know we have that education meeting coming up. So if there's somebody that wants to speak to anything specifically today, and I've got this screen up that I can see you, but I've also opened up my screen of the actual service delivery review, and there's a lot in there. So, in particularly with the landfills section. So I'm just wondering if it's okay with everybody that we'd sort of not make any decisions or direction today on this one, and that we would move on to the next initiative. But I'll open it up to the floor if there's staff or council want to say anything on this one. And I don't see that, so I think we will hold off on this particular strategy. And for further discussion after our education session. Okay. So, initiative 4.
Okay, the recreation facilities. So they identify that long-term recreation strategy could identify potential savings and service level changes to ensure ongoing sustainability. It's interesting that we look at potential direct savings. You would have to spend an awful lot of money before you get those direct savings, but the status right now is that we do have municipal land available in more than one location. We have extended our arena life significantly with the major rehab in 2012. So it does give us time to do proper planning as a community and council. And there are a lot of knowledgeable and active volunteers in the community that I'm sure would love to be engaged if council got to a point where they were ready to start visioning around what that looks like in the future. The timeline in the plan looks at 2024 and ongoing. The things they talk to in the plan that could move this forward would be canvassing potential partners, such as the townships, the college, service clubs, the school, then potentially creating a steering committee towards a joint facility, and then creating a unified vision through a facility master plan developed by public input. At that point, a governance structure could be looked at. It could be a municipal services board through contribution agreements, et cetera. But there are opportunities if we're looking forward to look at partnerships to reduce the overall impact of this type of facility on the community, whether it's sponsorships or partnerships. But that's a long range plan. So I don't know if you want to table that discussion for now, or I'll leave it to you.
Yep, I will open up the floor. It does say timeline 2024. Councillor Clark made a comment earlier about community engagement and that type of thing. And
Yeah.
Very challenging during COVID. This is one that really can't move forward. This is all about the community. This is all about engaging partners, individuals, stakeholders, etc. The transfer of land has not happened. It's still going forward, but I need to count my chickens before they're hatched, and I think something could happen. We do, the gift is in process, but I'm wondering if this is one that we could table. But I'll open it up to the floor for comments. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I think we have got a good start on this in terms of things that have been donated or we've got on the radar. I think the success of this is going to be based on us having a strong driver. The development of or identification and development of the partnerships is going to be key on us having a group to be able to move this thing forward. So I guess it'd be back to you, Madam Mayor, and to you, Tamara, as to who's going to champion this. Have we got somebody who's strong enough to really drive some of these partnership agreements we need going forward? That, to me, that'll drive the success of this. Thank you.
Tamara?
I think by the time council decides to move this initiative forward, it would probably be wise to contract with someone who was specifically focused on this initiative, whether it's leading the fundraising or leading the steering committee, and basically making this there. It doesn't have to be an employee, it could be a contract with somebody. But just to, if it's going to really become a priority, it needs that kind of specialized.
I don't disagree with that. It's a job. It would be a job, and you'd really want to go forward in the right direction. You'd want the majority of your community be in favor of it. Anything of building any kind of new facility or going in a direction like that is going to take enormous amounts of money. And I wouldn't want to see it polarize the community, or you'd really need that good planning ahead of time. But I thinking this is one that we could table for now. as it is a little bit farther out, but if there's any part of this initiative that we could be starting right now, this is the time to speak up. Tamara, go ahead.
If you're doing a public survey later in the year, general recreation needs is probably going to be identified as part of that.
Yeah.
You'll get some informal feedback through that mechanism.
Yeah. I've just been informed, I think it's your internet, but every once in a while your audio just goes, you don't have a earpiece or you can speak right into. I don't know why it does that. Yeah, try that. Okay. All right. So
Sorry, can I speak up for a sec?
absolutely, please.
I don't think it's an earpiece. I think it's just that we're sucking Tamara's internet with our, because she's screen sharing and her video's on at the same time. So another suggestion, Tamara, would be that you mute yourself and you call in so that your audio's through your phone. If you'd like to do it that way too, because I most of the time you're talking, Tamara, I can't hear you, and I don't know if anyone else can.
It's been a little bit choppy, but to me, she has repeated when we've asked her, but I don't want to continue the meeting if it's difficult. We'll try the next initiative. And
Do you want me to stop for a minute and then log in? I can log out of this and try and log into the iPad. It might be easier. Because I can,
Sure.
that's off the cell signal instead of the
will you
Wi-Fi.
share your screen still?
Can someone else screen share for her? And she can talk?
Either way, yeah, I should be able to still screen share, but I'll stop sharing now and I'll leave. Do you want to take a 5-minute break while I switch over?
Let's I'll take I'm going to ask all of council and staff to put your screens on, black out your screens and off, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. I'll do the same. You're showing speak.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's nothing secret.
Okay.
You might want to close that window, Mel. Is that able to? Otherwise, we can't see the initiative number 5 behind that. Is there?
I'm going to stop share for a second and I'll figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, we are live. That's all right. I know we're live. We're just trying to get, we had some internet issues, so we're just trying to get so that another staff member is screen sharing the initiatives, and we had moved on to initiative number 5. There'll be a fair bit of conversation on.
I can still speak to it if you want. Well, she's trying to get it up. It's not.
Yeah, because Tamara, you can still view your what yes, and it's just a slide deck to keep Tamara focused and whatnot. So anyway, Tamara,
Mallory's got it anyway. Okay, so short-term rentals. The implementation of regulation could address community concerns and increase revenues to support enforcement and education and tourism promotion. Potential increased revenue of 75 to 268,000. That's based on fairly conservative numbers of rentals that they identified. The timeline for that was suggested as 2022 to 2023. The status currently is staff, the Economic Development Committee, and past councils have met with iHost, which is an online short-term rental platform. We've met with them on several occasions to look at different options and how they might work with our local situation. And during the service delivery review, local agencies were consulted and met with Strategy Corps. We have a few options we could look at there as recommended through the plan. One of them would be to explore online licensing platforms like iHost, determine what fees would be required to offset costs of additional enforcement and the platform. They recommended $250 in the plan, but we'd have to definitely analyze that, because this has, any licensing has to be revenue neutral. We can't make money off of that. Conversely, there's also an opportunity for a MAT tax, a municipal accommodation tax, which is typically around 4% in municipalities that have implemented it. And the funds from that have to go to a not-for-profit tourism destination marketing organization, which is basically a separate corporation that would have to be set up with the sole purpose of using the funds for that. Not all of the funds have to go to that, but typically maybe a 70-30 split, where the other 30% stays within the municipal budget to promote general tourism and economic development initiatives. There are some places that have implemented both a MAT tax and licensing, but again, the licensing is cost recovery, where the MAT tax is something that can create revenues that go towards boosting marketing. In terms of other status of where we're at now, when we first started looking at short-term rentals several years ago now, we've also had improvements to our fireworks bylaw, and we've also started the septic reinspection programs, and those were two of the community concerns that were frequently addressed. There's also options for 24-hour complaint handling through an online platform, where if a neighbor complained about somebody next door putting off fireworks, they could phone a 24-hour hotline. The company has the contact number for the owner or management company. They get in contact with them at live time right away. They get in touch with the renters and hopefully put a stop to it immediately, instead of it being an issue that bylaw has to follow up with. And even if bylaw does have to follow up then in regular hours, they've got the documentation from the online complaint line to deal with. So there's a few options there. I'm thinking it's something that probably is going to require a lot of public consultation, both from the end of the agencies, people who rent their cottages, people who are neighbors to renting cottages. And I'm not sure that COVID right now is the best time. There's a lot of other public consultation going on, and probably if this one could wait it out another year to start, it would probably be more ideal. But there's also opportunities with the MAT tax and so forth to look at talking with the other municipalities as well. Comments?
Okay, so we'll open it up to the floor for comments. This is one that definitely, as Tamara said, has been lobbied about, bandied about, talked about, not just at Dysart, but across the county for sure. I know Highlands East has done surveys and gone back and forth, and every municipality seems to have tried to tackle this and not sure how. One thing I really like in the actual document that we have from Strategy Core is it really weighs out the benefits and negatives, and uses specific municipal examples of a licensing only, a MAT tax only, and then a combination of such. And MAT tax is one way to bring in revenue to help promote things, but the licensing is the more regulatory one. And I think that that's where we've had more issues, is that people are wanting to find ways to not restrict by meaning that they're not allowed, but as an example, in a licensing option, you can say you can only rent for 180 days, or you can only rent for certain periods of, so long times. Licensing is very different than trying to get the MAT tax. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions first, and then I have a couple of comments. Does Halliburton County implement the MAT tax? Because I've been in several tourism meetings over the last 20 years, and that's always come up, but I didn't realize that they had gone ahead and did it.
No. We haven't.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. There's good reason for that too, because that's been talked around for like the last, 10 years. And the reason why they don't do that. And also, what is the license supposed to do? Like, I know that it was suggested that there be a license, but what actually is it supposed to do?
Well, this is when because I have two computers open, I'm able to actually look at our the plan. And one of the things that it's on page 44. One of the things is that there are clear rules. It says for operators such as septic requirements, present management, insurance, parking, fire safety, And there's a mechanism to enforce bad actors. So, and it can also limit the number of days. So for instance, in Niagara on the Lake, you have to be, oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember the detail of that. Tamara, we talked about this. Do you have to be living in the area or have a management company?
Oh, yeah, one or the other, to
So-
make sure you can respond right away to any issues.
Like any license, in order to receive the license, you have to abide by these are the rules. And so, for instance, and that's why I think maybe, licensing would be a better first step than just trying to get tax out of people. This is saying specifically, and in areas like Niagara on the Lake, and even in all kinds of areas where there are short-term rentals, what people don't want is someone purchasing a property for the sole exclusive use of short-term rental. The purpose of originally was, I'm not using my cottage for the month of August. I'll rent it out for 4 weeks. But what we don't want someone, you can limit the number of days. You can limit that they abide by the rules, which is the septic is for 8 people because it's a 4-bedroom house, that you cannot have more than the occupants as per your septic system. And that's in a specific license. So there's lots of benefits of licensing. It means more staff, but then the license that people pay, it means, so it's revenue neutral. That pays for the staff person.
Okay, so just for comments, I've been researching this for almost 4 years since I chaired the Economic Development Committee, and it was always a hot topic of conversation. I think that Will is also, because he chaired it after. So I asked if there was any experience around the table of that committee, and no one really had any experience around there on short-term rentals. So I took it upon myself to attend the Hastings Highlands workshop and the Highlands East public meeting. I've talked to septic people, professionals, neighbors, owners, tourism operators, a landfill attendant, and anybody that had any experience with short-term rentals. The neighbors, I even convinced them to put their cottages up on Airbnb so that I could get some more details about it. And they now have over 260 reviews. So I feel like that's kind of a good number to go with a wide variety of renters and input. So out of that, I feel like that anything that goes wrong is the onus is on the homeowner, and it's their responsibility to get educated and educate their renters. So I feel like the homeowner is taking a risk by letting somebody they don't know into their own private home or cottage, and the big platforms and other rental systems try their best to minimize the risk by supplying specific questions that need answers to educate the renter. So having reviews of the owner and the renter are really good, as no one wants a bad review. And most people are genuinely very grateful for allowing them into the owner's private property. Signage is crucial, and many renters need to be educated on how the septic system works and what's allowed or not allowed into the landfill sites, who the neighbors are, what is tolerated and what's not, like pets, kids, parties, fireworks, number of people, with what condition to leave the place in or whatnot. So there's always a few bad, disrespectful homeowners, but the same goes for the rentals as well. And the educated homeowner would want his investment to be set up for success as much as possible, as well as their guests. So they do not want anything to go wrong that needs to be attended to while renting. So pumping out the septic system yearly, leaving specific instructions for garbage removal, giving details regarding the types of neighbors and who are beside them, leaving information. So it's in the best interest of the owner to provide all of this. And short-term rentals bring more people into the area to experience what our area is all about. There's room for all accommodators, as everyone has their own personal preference on where they would like to stay. And the accommodators use the short-term rental platforms, as many accommodators take advantage of many platforms to advertise their motels or cabins too. In my opinion, the licensing is not the answer to get the homeowners educated to comply, as a majority do a good job at being very respectful. But why not, can we not post on the Dysart website a fillable PDF form that the owners can print off to leave at their property? It would have all the bylaws that pertain to our area and the section that would be filled out by each homeowner as to what, you know, is it a non-motor lake? What kind of fish are in the lake? And they can have the activities that are in our area to promote. And most of this information is already compiled in other areas of our website. So it could be linked to a recreation or a copy, or to copy that info into the PDF. All this information is also imported into the platform so that prospective renters do click on there, whether parties are allowed or they're not allowed. You can say, you know, your neighbor, if you like fishing, he's a fishing guide, just go over and chat with him, or no, don't talk to the neighbors because they don't want to be bothered at all. And all those little details can be put in there. So if there was a list that the homeowner could take into consider to lower their risk of renting their home or cottage, like having their septic pumped out and the current and names and numbers of companies that could do that, the fire alarms installed, and everything is sitting there at their fingertips on our website, it would be so much easier for them to comply to everything and know what they need to comply with, rather than us just like slapping them with a license that you have to pay $250 to have this license to make sure you have all this stuff done. Most renters that rent their properties out are really respectful of what they need to do because they don't want bad reviews. So I don't know if, I mean, I know that there's other places that also keep short-term rentals out completely, but we need the short-term rentals if you're going to be a tourism operator, of event coordinator, businesses. That's what keeps the tourists in the area. So it would just be a really good, and maybe other municipalities already have that on their websites, but it would be really good for us to implement that into ours, regardless of whether the license goes ahead or not.
Okay, that's a lot said, a lot to lot of different points there, but I'm trying to encapsulate that you are not in favor of a licensing structure, assuming that most people are, as they call it, good actors or good landlords or good, and we have good tenants. But the proposal of the $250 was used on an example of the township of Georgina and Niagara on the Lake. It is not, as Tamara said, the licensing fee could be based on, you have to do, I think for now you leave the fee out of it. You have to decide really as a council whether we want to go down that route. This is something I've mentioned before, that I think that if we are going to go down any one of the combination of routes, that it would be very beneficial to be working with our other townships, letting them know they don't have to agree with us, but certainly communication and saying that this is what Dysart is proposing. We've gone this far, you know, if you're interested, here's what our proposal looks like. So anyway, I think, so I hear Councillor Clark and then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Tammy's got a lot of information on it, which is great. I get more complaints about short-term rentals than just about anything else, and a lot of the complaints I'm getting is that it's changing the nature of neighborhoods. You know, where they bought either a lakefront home or they bought a cottage and they want to be part of a community, and when you've got transient people coming and going, and many of them partiers, it a lot of dissatisfaction. So I recognize this is going to take some discussion. You know, a short-term rental property that's primarily for that purpose is a business. It's not a residence. So it's got to be looked at differently. But I think there's going to have to be some more discussion and some consultation, community consultation. But in the interim, I think we have to strengthen our bylaw enforcement or somehow our enforcement on this. So that if people have got, if there are issues, they've got a place to call and things rectified. I think that's probably the way to deal with it in the interim, because it could take a year or two before we have this. We may end up even going the route of, if somebody wants to license their property for doing short-term rentals, that they may have to do a circulation to the other neighbors to get input as to whether or not people agree with it. So there's that aspect as well. So there's a lot of complexity to this. It's going to take some discussion from the neighborhoods, but I think what we need is if possible through Carl and Rob to strengthen our complaint process for people who are having issues with neighbors who are renting their properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith, next.
Thank you. This is certainly an emotionally charged topic. People feel strongly about it one way or another. Some, like Councillor Donaldson, would say no. Our area depends upon all of these visitors coming. It's good for the economy, and so the more the merrier. And then there are others that probably live next door that say, "Gee, it's not about, they don't care who's next door. It's the level of activity, the unpleasant nature of it, the impact it has on the lake. That higher degree of activity is way more than a typical cottage." And the reality that real estate agents tell us that many people have purchased cottages not for the purpose of coming to the lake periodically or every second weekend or for a couple weeks during the summer. They have purchased them strictly as a financial investment. Never intend to go near the place themselves. They just want it rented as many days of the year as possible. And that places a different load on our community services than a typical cottage, family cottage use. And yet they're paying the same taxes as the people next door that come to the cottage every now and again. And so it's, as I said, a very emotional issue. I've attended meetings. Minden Hills is looking at this. They've had public meetings on this topic. And it's something that I think our community has been asking for action on. I will say that for the summer of 2020, there were fewer complaints about this, but I think it was because the world was preoccupied with COVID. And this is going to come back at us. This was an issue in the last election. People wanted to know, what are you going to do about this? And so for us to not address this, coming up to 2022 and another round of elections would be unacceptable. We at least need to have a plan in place by that point where we can say, here's the work we've done. Here's how we're proposing to go forward. Strategy Corps has been kind enough to lay out many details, as you pointed out, Mayor Roberts, page 44 and elsewhere, identify approaches other communities have taken. Niagara on the Lake's there, Huntsville's there, and so forth. And so to me, I think initially we as a council need to decide, is this something we're prepared to pursue on our own? Are we going to abdicate and say, no, we want the county to do this and do a county-wide approach? And if we're prepared to do it on our own, then we need a plan of action in terms of, okay, we want to have a report on the options that are available to us by such and such a date, and we can take a position on it. But to just leave it unattended with no decisions having been made, is the wrong answer in my mind. We at least need to consider it, and as a council, take a position, and then we'll stand or fall with that. But I'm not prepared to ignore it, and I think working in 2021 to develop a plan and have something that could be implemented as soon as 2022, or at least be well detailed and be through a public consultation process so that it would be turned on and fully ready to go for January 1st, 2023 could be an outcome. But doing nothing to me is the wrong answer. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Smith, and I tend to agree. I've been on council long enough, and when it's actually similar to the septic inspection program that was 10, 12 years ago, and so that people were asking for that, and sometimes it just takes a long time for these things to come up and surface, and there is a solution. Licensing actually isn't that hard. We have a company called iHost that can monitor. So actually, it doesn't need a whole lot of consultation. It just needs decision-making. And so I see Tamara, and then Councillor Donaldson, and then Deputy Mayor Kennedy. So, Tamara?
I was just going to note that as in the past, as we've been looking at it for a long time, staff have all collaborated and put together basically some draft, what would be some licensing requirements. So it's, as somebody else noted, whether you have enough septic capacity for the numbers you have, whether you have fire escapes and all the other things in it. So we could bring that information back forward to make sure council has the most current information. We could also plan during this year to have iHost come back and do a online delegation to council to give an overview of how that works again, so we can all better understand that, to know if it's an option for us or not. I think there are things within that that can start to move it forward without having to be done right away, for sure. Like even just being able to analyze what we would need for fees, like we can figure out what costs of a compliance system would be, what cost of staff, and basically work backwards from there. And we can definitely get started on some of the discussion areas for sure.
Okay, thank you. Maybe getting iHost to come back would be excellent. This council has not seen it. Councillor Donaldson, then Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
A couple of things. Where is the county on the short-term rentals?
No, it's not a county, it's not even in the county service delivery review. What it is an example of where, and I'll liken the firework bylaw. Dysart does one, and then this township does one, but they had different dates. And then this one had, like, to me, it doesn't make any sense for us not to communicate. So it's not a county issue. It could be if we collaborated and we delegated, if we did the MAT tax route, then we could delegate the revenues from the MAT tax to go to the county economic development and tourism department, because that's for the good of the whole county. But the county won't be taking the lead on this. It could be us, could be another township, and then making sure that we communicate clearly with the other townships saying, we're doing this. Do you want to piggyback with us? We could make them, but we should definitely collaborate. It doesn't make sense. And we've been criticized that, of having 4 different flavors of licenses. And say, for instance, Dysart charges $200 for a license and Minden charges $4. I don't know why I said that, but let's maybe they charge 100. We definitely, if we decide that we want to take the lead in licensing, MAT tax, combination of both, then we will collaborate with the other townships.
Okay, and that's good to know that it's not on the county's radar. And then is it possible, just to go back to the website, is to add some information on there, as if it doesn't get done this year, we've at least added some information on there about short-term rentals as to what needs to be done, like what would be on your license list that you suggested was the fire alarms and all this other all the other stuff that was on there. Like, can that be added to our website so that they at least have a list of what's possible if it had to be licensed? But they should be doing their due diligence anyways and wanting to make sure everything complies. But if we could add something to the website in the meantime of what we want them to do, that would probably be beneficial and an easy thing to do in 2021. And also the iHost, like that was over $30,000 a year that they wanted, I thought, for that iHost from us. And why do we want to be the host? I don't understand.
Because we'd be collecting the licensing. So they'd be working on our behalf and they would send out all the correspondence on our letterhead. They would be the complaint. They'd receive the complaints and deal with them directly with owners unless bylaw had to follow up. So basically it pushes a lot of the administration to a third-party online platform. And that way either the cottage owner or the management company can upload any required information. It's basically to, like you said, to have that checklist there, to have somewhere for them to upload their documents. If there are any like maybe floor layouts for emergency plans, things like that that might be required. And so it's all in one place as well. It's not meant, I don't think the goal is meant to try and restrict or limit short-term rentals. I think it's just to strike that balance for everybody and provide a communication tool to both residents that have them and the other part of the community.
Okay, thanks, Tamara. Deputy Mayor Kennedy next, and then Councillor McKechnie.
Yeah, I think everybody knows I don't know why the county's not taking this on. All 4 lower tiers are struggling with this. There's too many possibilities. I take Kashagawigama as an example. Lot 1 in Dysart, as you say, is $200 and Minden is $300 the next door. But basically my patience is up. I'd like to see us move forward with this in 2021 with implementation in 2022, but without the MAT tax, unless the county takes it on. If the county were to take it on, then I think we should look at the MAT tax. That we already have a destination marketing organization through our Department of Tourism. Those funds could be directed there, would help offset budget costs. I think we have to look at a 2-tier system. I think there's a number of our cottagers who rent a couple 3 weeks a year to help pay taxes or put a new dock out there or a new roof on. That should be some kind of a lower one. Then the other ones need to be maximum, the 29 days per month, and look at our lake capacities as well. In other words, grandfather our lakes that are lake trout lakes at capacity are immediately grandfathered. No more permits will be issued. Lake trout lakes not at capacity, maybe a different thing if we do the surveys. I think there's a lot of work needs to be done, but I think the time for waiting is over.
That's an interesting comment about different licensing fees. If you, depending on, and I don't know if iHost could talk about that, if it, depending on the, it's based on the number of days you rent, or if it's between here and here, it's this much for license and it's between this and this. It all goes back to regulating. And I think that's why I've heard loud and clear being on council as long as I have, that people want, even the host, even I had a place and I used to rent it out. And if I had to pay a license fee for that, that's so be it. I would have been a good host and I would have complied. And if you go back to this, they're under the Georgina model, it talks about then, if you didn't comply, you sort of get infractions, you get warnings. You're not, like you say, I understand what you're saying, Tammy. Most people are good, but not all of them are. And we're getting more and more. And like I said, at the onset too, we could limit the number of days so that it isn't solely for the purpose of a short-term rental. It's exactly for what Deputy Mayor Kennedy said, or you're not there, or you just, it does help pay for the maintenance and the ongoing costs of that. So I think bringing in iHost to Dysart, seeing as we want to take the lead on this, is a very first step before we do anything else, and get those questions ready and do our homework before we had iHost come and do a presentation. Tamara?
I agree. If we have iHost in, and then perhaps have that as part of a special meeting just focused on short-term rentals with council and staff, similar to what we're doing now. Because there is a lot of information, and we could bring back what we've gathered so far in terms of what the opportunities are, and hear more from Councillor Kennedy on options he's seen as well. And I think that'd be a good place to start, because I think that the first step is council really deciding, what do you want to achieve from it? What's your end goal? And that'll help shape really easily how you get there.
When Councillor Donaldson, you referenced, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor McKechnie, I'll hold off. Go, Councillor McKechnie.
Yeah, how is this going to affect all the cottage rental businesses? But if we put something in place with iHost, or did you hear me?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry, Tamara, you want to, I see a hand. So are you answering that, Tamara?
Stupid question or what?
Oh,
yeah, no. Basically, instead of the cottage owner uploading any information on a cottage, I imagine the local cottage rental agency could upload the information. We also looked to see if there were any opportunities where they could create a file that could be uploaded to it directly, so it would save them time and so forth. But they were interviewed by Strategy Corps through this. the biggest thing that they got out of it in terms of comments were that the local companies weren't supportive of the MAT tax. But I think if licensing were reasonable, they wouldn't object as much. That's the feeling I got.
The few people that I know that are connected to these cottage rentals businesses, they keep a pretty good history of who's renting your cottage, and if you are in the category of bad actors, needless to say, you don't get to rent it again. And so I'm just wondering, are they going to be included in any of our discussions?
Yes, definitely. It would be part of any public consultation. We have in the past talked about if it was a local company and because they have all those stringent requirements, would we charge a lesser license fee than we would to an Airbnb? But again, I think we could talk about this for hours, and that's why I think a separate session would be really helpful, because we only have 20 minutes to get through the rest of the presentation. So if council wants to pursue doing more with this, we can certainly bring more forward in the form of at least a background report to start, and set up something with iHost.
Mayor, on that point, I think let's close the conversation. I have been keeping an eye on the time, but I didn't want to rush anything. I think bringing in iHost and report on that, and if we had iHost come, we could, it's a public meeting, we could invite the cottage rental groups to come as well, which they did. Councillor Donaldson referenced the Economic Development Committee. We did have someone from one of the cottage rental companies come, one of the larger ones here in the county, and they weren't in favor of a licensing fee as long as it was reasonable. So we do need to move on to keep with time. So first step is bringing iHost in and planning a special meeting. But that's okay. I think we'll move on to the next initiative. And
okay, so it's a sewage treatment plant. So review of expanding customer base for current and future sewage to ensure long-term sustainability. Potential direct savings of $325,000. Currently, our resurfacing projects within the town limits have been put on hold where potential expansion could take place until such time as this review is completed. There's the opportunity to investigate funding models and partnerships to advance the expansion. And the geotube project that's been identified also needs to be considered as part of this overall review. It's identified in the plan as 2024 and onwards. We have to recognize with some of these timelines as we're all eager to get things going this year, but the reason for the spread out too is, again, to manage that capacity of what staff can and council can manage to handle in a reasonable manner. But that said, I think there are some potential opportunities coming up. I'd like to defer to Rob Camelon for any further answers or questions or comments.
Yeah, again, it's something that's been on the radar for a while. I do expect to see some movement on this in the near future, and say until we get there, I'm just not really sure how much we want to discuss the initiative number 6 here until we get some background information and maybe some sort of direction or some guidance from others that are going to speak to this later on.
I think that's wise. So unless there's any further comments on that, we know it, we haven't forgotten about it, but there may, just what Rob said. Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
Yeah, I agree with Rob on that. In the interim, I'd like to know what the potential cost might be to the plant renovations. Rob, I think you probably have you may not have it at your fingertips, but an idea of what that may cost to increase the capacity there as an initial step as we move forward on geotube statuses and expansion of our lines. Might be a first step.
Ooh, putting me on the spot.
I didn't mean to, Rob. Sorry. About that other tank that was there that was decommissioned needs to be recommissioned. So.
Yeah, we're what I can say is we're in pretty decent shape at that site right now. When the original plant was built, or not the original, the new plant was built, it was built to be easily expanded. So it's not like we're going to be building a brand new plant when we need to expand. There'd be a couple components we have to really add on to it. And we can also utilize the old plant for holding on to some sludge. So, all in all, we're in pretty good shape as the plant sits now. But to have a dollar value, I don't have that at the tip of my fingers.
I don't think Deputy Mayor Kenny was, but it's something that we should just keep in our radar. We get several housing projects all of a sudden all at once, and then we hit capacity. We really should just get that little step ahead of, because it will happen. Maybe it won't happen, obviously not in the next couple of years, but the rate of growth right now is, and what the planning department's seeing down the pipe, I mean, it could be 6 years from now. And we don't want to be wait until it's sort of too late and have to actually turn down projects because we didn't plan for that capacity. So you didn't need to answer that today. So if that's okay. Oh, Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Rob, will there be future capacity, or is there opportunity for the pump out trucks as opposed to them doing field spreading to accommodate? The reason I'm saying that is a number of years back with the Minden Council, there was discussion around a revenue generator where they had additional capacity. So they, I know right now a lot of trucks go to places like Bracebridge and Aurelia, and they're charged for doing their, the drop. If we have opportunity or we have a need to expand our operation a bit, can that be offset with the idea of using trucks to drop there as opposed to the field spread?
As it stands now, we don't have the capacity just because of the concentration of the septage. I don't know if increasing the capacity of the plant will address that or not. I don't have that answer again at my fingertips. But the geotube project is solely designed for the haulers to dump into. So we could dewater it, and then the effluent would run back to the plant. So.
Yeah. Councillor Smith?
Just on that, Rob, is my understanding from those sessions that Clearview or Clearwater or Clearford, I guess Clearford is run, that our sewage plant cannot handle septage, and so we've got a report supposedly coming back, and I don't know if you've found out the timeline yet, but Clearford is to come back and tell us the next step on this septage processing facility. It could be geotubes, it could be something else, but their recommendation was geotubes, near the current industrial park landfill. And again, that need not be 2024. My understanding was we frankly should have had the report by now. Do you know when that's going to come?
Again, I mentioned at the last meeting, I'm going to shoot for something to come forward next month. I'm just trying to tighten that up. So.
Okay, so we'll have a report hopefully then in March that will give us some guidance in terms of, here's the requirements, here's the cost, and we can begin to shape, kind of a financial analysis in terms of are there grants that we might go after, or is this going to be like the current sewage plant funded based on some sort of debenture that gets repaid based on user fees in the years to come. Would need to establish whether or not we can mandate that there is no field spreading in Dysart anymore, because everybody that pumps their tank in Dysart needs to take the waste to our new facility. Kind of set of rules that ensure it gets used, right?
Yep, good points. Okay, so that means we can move on to the last initiative, number 7, which is roads as well. And Tamara, on you.
For roads digital infrastructure. Implementing digital technology in the roads department could improve productivity and support cost avoidance. Direct savings of 45 to 225,000 with potential productivity gains of 45 to 250,000. Currently, Rob's using the DOT software, as we know. The bids and tenders online bidding platform was initiated this past year. The AVL and camera program expansion is happening as we acquire new vehicles. Online payroll submission and time off requests and approvals through HR's My Way are well underway. Rob started the digital inspections on a pilot project with the mesh software. The procurement coordinator that we're proposing will be able to help with the administration of the bids and tenders portal and the implementation of a purchase order system, which will further digitize the records so that the managers won't have to physically write account codes on invoices and sign off on them. That'll be more automatic through the purchase order system through Great Plains. And the timeline for that is 2021 to 2022. And as you can see, a lot of that's underway. It's a big learning curve for everybody, managers, employees. But Rob, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, just expand a little bit on what you said, Tamara, about the mesh work management platform that we use. And we've been using it for, I think, about 3 years now. Initially, we bought it strictly for road patrol. So it is being used for road patrol by the roads department now. We've also got rid of our morning reports. So that's kind of our winter dispatch. So that's done online now. No additional cost. We pay per user for the platform. So any apps we put on there are free. We're getting to the point where we can kind of develop them ourselves with a bit of a nudge from the developer. We're going to move ahead with rolling out a summer dispatch. So just expand on what we're doing now. And we're in testing phase for a vehicle and fleet maintenance. So we've added the mechanic as a user to get rid of those handwritten work orders. The point there is we can bring up dashboards on our laptops every morning, so he can kind of look at it and do the red lines first and work your way down. So it kind of prioritizes for him. As you all know, he does not have any help out there. So he's the mechanic and inspector and stock keeper and all sorts of good stuff. So we're trying to give him some more tools to kind of help him out a little bit. But we've also expanded out to the parks department. So they are logging when they shovel all the stairs in the winter through this platform. They're also doing their boat launch inspections. So now we can prove we were there and what it looked like when we were there. And John has kind of taken it under his wing as well for the environmental side. So we have 3 users plus John on the environmental side. So they're doing daily inspections on this and car counts and also their blue box bin dispatch as well. So it is getting utilized quite a bit. There's certainly more room to make it grow. But just keep in mind, although the apps are free, we pay per user. So if we want to expand it to more people, it's going to cost more per month.
Okay, that's fabulous. This is one of the areas where I think, Tamara, you mentioned at the beginning, is as we did the service delivery review, a lot of things were sort of just coming into place so I would say in this area that we are really moving forward, and those things are so important for productivity, but also for liability and making sure your I's are dotted and T's are crossed and there's record of everything. And that's the way we have to do business. So it's more efficient and more formal, which is great. So any questions on this program? We already made a decision basically throughout our budget process that the AVL cameras would go forward as we purchase new vehicles. So I'm not sure that there's a lot of decision making in here that we need to do at this point. Unless there's any questions or comments to Rob on this. So that sort of concludes, Tamara, I believe you had a couple extra slides near the end.
Yeah, we still have more Dysart stuff to go.
Okay.
We're done the actual initiatives, but there's still some more outstanding items.
Yep.
We want to go on to the next slide if we're done with roads. So outside of the 7 major initiatives that were identified, there were a number of other smaller items that were sort of hidden within the various reports. They're listed here on the screen: digital records transformation across the organization. I think you can tell that's what we're working towards in pretty much every department. Parks surveillance and policy. This past year, council passed the parks video surveillance policy. And through the visitor center build and some potentially other grants, if we get them, we'll be increasing our park surveillance this summer. Online property tax management is something that is a potential module. I believe Barbara can speak to that through Great planes, there might be something can be done. It hasn't been identified yet. It's a bit of a workload for staff to get up and running and some costs associated, but if there's interest from council, that can be brought forward in the future. Council chamber accessibility and ability to broadcast meetings, that's all well underway now. The TVs and the cameras and microphones and everything are ready to go. Civil unions, we've been working on that with some people in the private sector, but we've opted as staff to put that on hold this year while we're still under the pandemic and wait to bring something forward till we're a little bit more normalized. Online burn permits have now been done. They're on our website, so you can pay and sign and get them approved online. Online building permit process is underway. It was identified that we need more team programming for culture and rec. Online planning applications are currently being developed for same thing, e-commerce and so forth. They suggested exploring more ways to increase donations to the museum while remaining accessible to the entire community. So not fees, but how can we get more donations in? For the roads department, a sand dome consideration. Go on to the next page if you like, Mel. And then these next items are opportunities that were identified in our plan that require or could benefit from municipal collaboration, but they're not included in the Halliburton Municipal Service Delivery Review. So there's online elections, consideration of green and winter burials, considering capital trail equipment that could be shared, a shared community volunteer registry for recreation and culture, our kennel as a shared service. Consider geotubes with the capacity to provide countywide solutions, Larry just mentioned. Streamline tax deadlines across communities. As we know from COVID, we found we're all very different in how that rolled out. Emergency management as a shared service. Collaboration for off hours by law enforcement, example, fireworks. Could there be a person contracted that worked for everybody that went out on a per call basis to deal with lifetime complaints? And review fire agreements with Highlands East. So again, these are all outside of the Halliburton review, but they've been noted in ours. So we do need to look at how those things could move forward to discuss with the other townships as opportunities, considering what's going on with the other larger plan at the moment. So I don't know if you want to stop and discuss that there.
What just popped in my head is to make sure that, because the rest of council are seeing the slide deck as you're putting it up there, but I would suggest just for your files or records, or if you could send this to all of council after.
Yeah, I certainly will.
Yeah, because we can only spend so much time today. So I don't want to get into too detailed discussion. I think it's just remember these things. And one way to remember them is to keep them in a file folder on your computer.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
So if you want to go on to the next slide, then Mallory, try and keep moving so we can get through everyone out of here quickly. So the service delivery review next steps. Did we miss a slide with the county one or no? Go back one. Oh, maybe not. Okay, sorry, go forward. Go forward. I'm jumping ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our Dysart service delivery review, all future council and committee reports will support the advancement of the SDR and will identify resources and decisions required. So anything we've talked about today, basically we'll have detailed reports coming forward and that will give you some clear direction on what you need to decide and how much it's going to cost to get there. And the service delivery review provides valuable input towards the development of a strategic plan and more defined departmental business plans to support the municipality overall. Next slide. So now we get into the Halliburton Municipalities Service Delivery Review. So we had at that level 12 high-level initiatives identified. roads and drainage, fire services, waste management, coordinated building, septic and bylaw, planning services, economic development, collaborative procurement, integrated digital strategy, coordinated legal services, human resources coordination, communications and coordination. Of those things, the procurement initiative, if you actually flip to the next slide, Mal, if you don't mind. So at this point, Councilor Mayor Roberts and Deputy Mayor Kennedy might want to chime in, but there's support at County Council to take the economic development function back to the county level with the hiring of a new economic development officer. And it's also been determined that a deeper dive into collaborative procurement opportunities will take place later in the year. On the procurement, this person at the county would liaise with the Dysart position that we've recommended. Our position is focused on bids and tenders administration, grants administration, lease coordination, implementation of the purchase order system, and then we'll collaborate with the county position on projects of a joint nature, collaborative nature across the municipalities. That is the plan anyway, but they're probably going to look at that later in the year. Would either of you like to comment on that further?
Yeah, maybe I'll just open it up to Deputy Mayor Kennedy first, if you wanted to speak to that, and I'll add on if.
Okay, yeah, actually, we had a good discussion at the last, January 13th, we had a special meeting on it. It's a big chunk to chew off, so what was decided, that one was the economic development position will move forward this year and should be in place by the end of Q1, which include a budget placeholder, which we did. And the CAOs are going to report in depth on that, and we'll be developing a job description shortly. Procurement position, yeah, I agreed to look at the third quarter start, probably Q2, Q3 for finalization. I'm going to pause on the communication piece because everybody is doing that now and need a little more structure over that. Legal services, there's some mixed feelings on that and the costs involved for having a lawyer. So that will, at the county level, that will have some more discussion. I've received some correspondence in the last few days, actually, with regards to this topic that I forwarded on and will be on next week's agenda. Procurement, Tamara's already talked about. So basically what the decision was, we're probably going to take one of these, I think at each of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Mayor, but I think it was at the next committee, each committee of the whole, one of the topics would come up for discussion and whether to move forward, defer, delay, or just what it is. But I think that's the process we're going to start moving forward with, identify some primary ones and then work through the rest.
You captured that very well. It was a bit of a rough start, that meeting, because we didn't really know sort of where we were going. So then we determined to look at, they had theirs broken down into short, medium, and long-term initiatives. There was, like we have here, what are the years out or where. So it was determined, as Deputy Mayor Kennedy said, that an economic development officer was a priority, and also procurement. So it's funny how service delivery review will actually be spending more money, but sometimes that makes you more efficient. And it seems it's been a priority at the county for quite some time now to have somebody in place for economic development. And so I'm not sure exactly, I think you said something about Q1, but I think by the end, it was just mainly to have what the job description will be, what the, I guess basically job description, how they all affiliate with the lower tiers or communicate, how, and all of what is encompassed in a new creation of a new / old position. So that's what took place. And yes, it's an ongoing conversation, such as ours will be as well. It's not something that you just have this conversation today's meeting, but we will continue to have it. And there was quite a desire at the county. The meeting ended really, really well. And there was a desire at the county to make sure that we keep this ball rolling and utilize the service delivery review that we've had done, and make sure that we keep coming back to it, keep looking back. That's why I said, I downloaded mine on my computer, and I will take Tamara's slide deck from today and keep that on there as well, and keep our goals going forward. So I think that's everything to say on the Halliburton County Service Delivery Review.
Yeah, you can probably take the screen share off now, Mal, if you want.
Sure.
There you go. I guess one other thing is on January 21st, I was invited to participate on a webinar with Strategy Core on the path forward for Ontario municipalities related to service delivery reviews. So I think they saw us hopefully as a successful process, and I offered to come back in a year and report on our successes. So I'll be keeping on top of it, and hopefully we can report back some successes. I think we've already started to show that. And staff have put in a lot of work, and we're thankful to council for the support to bring forward some of these initiatives and have a discussion like today where there's more time to focus on this kind of thing.
Well, I think it's great you did that webinar. I don't know how many people would have been watching, but quite a few and all across Ontario. So I'm sure you represented Dysart and us well and spoke well. And you know, it goes back to even what we talked about in customer service. You have to constantly be inward looking. How can we do it better? How can we run this organization better? How can we communicate better? It's never perfect. It's always work. And there's only so many things you can do at the same time. And so, you know, we have these conversations and we work together and we prioritize. So further comments as we conclude our meeting today, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. So one of the areas identified in the county report was roads, bridges, and drainage. They spoke to about $500,000 in savings. Is that something that's going to get talked about at the county at the next meeting, or and where is that one? Because it was actually the biggest one in terms of potential service improvements and cost reduction.
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm not entirely sure what if it is on the next one or not, but I know it's been identified as one of the priorities. I don't have it in my notes as to what the next one is. I thought I did, but I don't have it.
I've got my notes from that meeting as well, and I did not write that one down. I think because it wasn't in the short term, it might have been had the biggest economic cost.
Oh, it started.
It was roads, bridges, drainage, active, yeah, waste management.
First up.
Yeah.
Right.
So, no, we did not finalize the plan, so we can get back to you on that one.
All right, just you know, and because it's a big one, and it's something that intuitively makes a lot of sense because we've all got bridges, we've all got roads. You know, we put out a tender for hard topping for some of our roads, and the report suggests, and the province, the reference to the province says that they've had actual experience with this. When you make these RFPs bigger, prices go down, whether it's 5%, 10%, even in some cases 15%. So, and it just brought to mind the you know, the opportunity for collaboration across municipalities. You know, independent of waiting for the county to kind of get it all together. You know, they use the term bilateral shared service delivery. You know, and one example, and it sort of rang with me was the Coagument area of Dysart. So folks that live up in that area near Dorset, we've got about 140 properties up there that are part of Dysart. Those people don't need to come down to the West Guildford landfill site because it would be over an hour drive for them. And so there's been an informal arrangement made that they're able to access the Algonquin Highlands landfill that's up there. This report, you know, spoke to our building department. So when there's a building permit or a septic permit on any of those properties up there, you know, our folks have to go up there. It takes an hour drive to get from Halliburton to Dorset. And then they got to go into, you know, wherever the individual property is. Suggestion is, gee, why isn't that building inspection process being handled by Algonquin Highlands, because they're servicing that area anyway. And so I'm wondering about that, you know, that bilateral shared service delivery. Are we engaging in some of those opportunities independent of the county, because that would just be between Algonquin Highlands and Dysart, for example. And there were other examples in the report. And I'm just looking for some assurance that those things are being pursued because they're, you know, they improve service delivery, they improve productivity, and frankly, they make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, good points. I think we just, it took a while, like I say, to get that meeting going. We probably spent the first half an hour saying, what are we going to talk about? And then the last hour and a half, we seemed to get on track. So it was determined that it would sort of the road bridges culvert section would be talked about we didn't set a date, but at a future meeting. But I think at any time, if our staff see an opportunity in any department to collaborate, to work with a neighboring municipality, that makes sense. Do we have with the landfill out at Harcourt, where some people that are on the Highlands East side can take, there are some things that are maybe already in place that are informal. Some things need to be more formalized, and some things still need to be pursued. But I'd encourage any staff member, they're the ones that are in the operations that are seeing how things could go, and so, that can be ongoing in any department.
And part of it's going to be the standardization between townships on such things as our building departments. We look for, there is the core, but then Dysart has a couple of things, and Algonquin Highlands has a couple of things, for example. On the landfills, we were thinking about the Harcourt and the one on Mumford Road, which is in Highlands East. They're like 4 kilometers apart, but Harcourt people can't go there because the ECA, I'm not sure if I got the right acronym or not, doesn't allow that. So there's those kinds of hurdles that we have to face. And I think that's where it got, quite frankly, Councillor Smith, it got bogged down in some of those semantics. And so there needs to be some groundwork. Let's at least come up with where the differences are, and then work towards coming together on some of them. And then those initiatives can move forward. I think they're still important, but it did get bogged down in the minutiae of, well, we do this differently in Highlands East, or for example, right? And that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. It has been identified as a priority. I think the CAOs have got a big job ahead of them to try and bring some of that material together, and then it'll be up to councils to give and take on, for example, fireworks, right? That's a good example. Everybody's got a slightly different approach to it. It's just one of those things.
One of those things. Well, I think that's been a good meeting today, and we're just slightly past our 2-hour mark. Oh, Councillor McKechnie, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we discussed a lot of topics here today, and I know in my ward, and it's nothing on this meeting, but it's a big topic, is the cell phone and internet service. I mean, where is anything happening? I mean, most wards aren't affected, but my ward is really affected by it. And to me, it's a very, very big problem we have. And I know it's county, and I know it's provincially, and I know it's federally driven, but it seems to me like it's way in the back burner, of course, with COVID and other issues. But I get asked that all the time.
Okay, Tamara, you want to respond to that, because it isn't part of our service delivery. So.
No, actually, but Andrea and I actually met with, Mayor Roberts, and I met with the North Frontenac last week to see it because of the SendGen funding that was out. Probably don't have the right acronym there. Just to see if there are any opportunities for Dysart and so forth. But he does have some projects on the go, and they'd like to come, and we've asked them to come to council to give an update as to where they are in Dysart and what they're working on, so we can better understand where either we can support them or not to keep expanding. But the one fund that is out right now is more focused on innovative options, and it's only basically one municipality in the whole province gets picked out of it. So it's basically a lot of work for probably not a good outcome. So we didn't pursue that further at this time.
But I wouldn't say that issue is on the back burner at all. It's just Deputy Mayor Kennedy and myself are not privy to where things are at. Brent Volan serves on the EORN board, and he keeps saying there's some good news coming, and we're waiting. And the county is working, and Mike Rutter is working very, very hard. It is absolutely a priority. But anyway, just to keep, because that's not on this meeting, and I'm looking at the clock, if there's anything further to service delivery review, we can just.
I just think it'd be really good if the county communicated more with, say, you and Pat, who can communicate to me So when I'm asked, I'm informed. I don't have to stand there and look like a stoop. Because I don't really know where it's at all.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy, you want to respond to that?
Unfortunately, it's all under the cone of silence right now. It's our understanding that the RFPs have been reviewed, and I think they're on the verge of being awarded. And at that time, then there can actually be some public announcements. Both CAO Rutter and Mayor DeVolen are quite engaged and have been for months and months on this. We keep being told it's just around the corner that the announcements will start to come, whatever that means. We're all in the same boat.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Clark, did you have anything to say about service delivery review?
No, it's just with regard to Councillor McKechnie's point. I've had a number of inquiries, and what I've done is I've directed them on to Mayor DeVolen, and he's pretty good at responding. So if you really get pushed, you can also go that route.
Okay, so I just want to.
Sorry on that. Also for Councillor McKechnie, Eorn has said publicly, at least I've heard it, that they're going to have a decision, an announcement before the end of March. They said the first quarter. They got these RFP responses. They're going to tell us before the end of the quarter how they're going to spend this money.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Smith. We will keep you posted on anything we know. So just to wrap up, Tamara, if you can send that slide deck because it had your bullet points in, which I think are really helpful. Sometimes reading the whole review is a lot of work, and also just those other opportunities at the end that we can sort of keep in our mind. So I just want to thank everybody for today, all of the staff and council for this initial first look at our service delivery review. And I now at the point of resolutions, which are that I need a mover seconder to receive the presentation. Councillor Clark and Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that council receive the presentation on advancing the 2020 service delivery review for information purposes. All in favor? Carried. And a confirming bylaw, mover seconder. Councillor Wood Roberts, Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Bylaw 2021-07 being a bylaw, oh, it doesn't say, okay, moved by and seconded by, that doesn't word right there, Mallory, but anyway, being a bylaw, 2021.
I'll fix it.
Okay, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special meeting, a special council meeting held on February 16th, 2021. All in favor? Carried. And lastly, a motion to adjourn at 3:14, mover and a seconder. Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that council adjourn its special meeting held on February 16, 2021 at 3:14 p.m. All in favor? That is carried as well. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, and go shovel your driveways or snow blow. Okay, take care.